Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me here, dear Prime Minister, dear Mette, dear friends. Let me start by saying it is great to be here and back in Denmark. I was thinking when I first came here, I first landed here 20 years ago to follow a European Council meeting, and I thought it was probably the coolest place in the world. Great people, great food, probably the best beer in the world. And then I went to Roskilde Festival and its cathedral, and my view was confirmed. I wanted to start like this because I think that that's the beauty of Europe. I came here and I was asked on my way here, what is your message? And I'm clear in this. The first message I learned 2 decades ago is that Europe is worth it. It is worth your time, your energy, your belief. It is worth the frustrations that it sometimes causes. It is worth the funds it costs. It is worth it because it makes people's lives better. And it is worth it because ours is a project that is unique in the world, that has at its underlying concept a very simple one: hope. We sometimes forget that truth. We get bogged down in dealing with one crisis after another: economic, migration, social, health, energy, security. It is true that we tend to come up with strange, roundabout ways disguised by ununderstandable acronyms that turn people away. And it is true that it sometimes feels that Europe is far away from our everyday realities. I get that, and that's why I am here today. To listen, to explain, to answer any question you have, and to remind you that the heart of Europe beats as loudly in Jutland or Zealand as it does in Brussels or Strasbourg. So when a teenage girl was taken, we shared those 27 hours with you, just as we share your determination to ensure that there can be not one town, not one village, not one corner of our Europe where girls should not feel safe, where women are not allowed to live their lives. Now, we may share the good times with the bad, but Europe is not about making everyone the same. We are not homogeneous. We don't all share the same traditions, languages, or cultures. But the beauty of this project it is that it's precisely those differences that give us strength of purpose. It is those differences that autocrats mistakenly thought was weakness. And we proved them wrong in our response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and we will keep proving them wrong. Building Europe took enormous political courage. It meant that people who fought each other for the entirety of history sat down and said cooperation is better than conflict. They understood that together we can all be prosperous, we could all be safer. And it was that belief that you started with, that realpolitik and hope could come together 50 years ago in 1973. So many member states were still strangled under the weight of the Iron Curtain. And Mette, we've said this, and I told you, you have led in this half century. And I say it openly, it took tough decisions to follow through, to turn rhetoric into action, to transform lives, to change the course of history. And Europe did that. This imperfect project of ours did that. The last 50 years, when we look back, we have seen the transformation of Europe and of Europeans. Everything has changed, perhaps except the certainty of hope that will drive us forward to the next 50 years. And we need to find that political courage again. It's getting harder and harder. I want us to recapture that sense of hope and belonging. The Danish influence on the development of Europe is something we do not speak enough about. You have been through it all, and I can see the road ahead as only a very positive one. Now, you asked us to talk about what are the next steps. They must be about delivering the reform that people want to see. Reform in laws, in legislation that allow us to showcase the economy and the environment as the same sides of the same coin. We cannot neglect one to help boost the other, and we can learn from this country's experience here. I think we proved it just last week when the European Parliament passed some of the most important legislation of our mandate. Now, our new climate laws are not only about making our shared space healthier, it makes it safer, stronger, and more prosperous. The laws that we passed are world-leading and world-reaching, and ultimately a message. And Mette, I take your point. It's true about us thinking that we are that globe. On this, I think we can say the green transition is also about new jobs when we talk to our partners across the world. And also it shows that such big challenges and difficult decisions are worth taking because they pay in the long run. When we talk about reform in how we approach new realities we see every day, AI and ChatGPT means that the next digital revolution is already upon us. Now, how we approach change is important. Do we seize the opportunity or do we allow fear of change to guide our decisions? To me, Europe is about unbridled possibility. At the same time, we need to make sure that our legislation is ready for the future. And this is where I hope that the institution that I have the great privilege of leading comes in. Our Parliament, with the members of the European Parliament that you all elect from this country, pushed forward new laws on digital services that served to protect our data and unleash our tech potential. The tough decisions and negotiations meant that we are now able to deal with the new AI reality. We are able to better counter cyber attacks and bots that seek to use our tools against us. We are able to push back against disinformation, unsettling the democracies that we have long taken for far too long for granted. We also need to see reform in how Europe moves forward. We have Ukraine, Moldova, Bosnia waiting to start accession negotiations. Of course, every country must move at its own pace and on its own path. But the transformational impact of Europe is huge. Young Moldovans standing up against every odd imaginable believe in Europe. Young Ukrainians fighting imperialist aggression in trenches believe, and we need to help them in the defense of democracy. And here, Denmark has led again. You understand that it is not only about defending the values we share, it's about our own security, our own democracies, and our own defense. We didn't ask for this moment, but we must rise to meet it. And that means implementing sanctions, providing military, humanitarian, political, and economic support to Ukraine. This is not about charity. It is about an understanding that Europe has a line in the sand. And if we allow that to be erased by Russian tanks, then everything else we have taken for granted will be called into question. Reform must also mean reimagining our political culture that has turned so many people away from politics. I'm asked this in every country I go and also in my own. We need to reinforce the resurgence of the political center in Europe, where we deliver on people's expectations without forcing them to retreat to the fringes or the extremes, where we are able to counter the false narratives and easy answers to difficult questions peddled by populists. After the economic crisis some years ago, we saw more and more people look away. We cannot allow that to happen again now in a post-pandemic world that has become more unpredictable, more dangerous. That is why we have to be careful not to throw away all the painful lessons learned about European economic and fiscal policies. Some flexibility may well be necessary, but we cannot allow a free-for-all that will simply become a precursor to the next generation's financial crisis. It is about pushing the concept of better Europe that matches the need for more Europe. Funds are finite, Debts must be paid back, and the only way we are able to do that is if we are able to grow our economies. We have the tools that we need to tackle inflation and reduce disposable income, but we need to find the political courage to use them to avoid an overly protectionist race to the bottom. Last word from me. Next year, we will again turn to you to help choose the direction of Europe. Where do we want to go? Do we keep moving forward, or do we stop? You will get to choose your members of the European Parliament, and that is your privilege and responsibility. You have a lot to be proud in the members that you have elected. Europe may not be perfect, it's not a fairy tale, but it is worth it. And if you do not choose your representatives, someone else will. And that Europe may be very different to the one that you would like to see. So let's build that together. And I look forward to answering any questions. Thank you.